My name is Michael Seifert. I'm the founder and CEO of PublicSq. You can find us at PublicSq.com. We're the nation's largest directory of patriotic America First businesses that are prioritizing freedom in the marketplace.
You talk about, the forced labor camp. You're aware of the forced labor camp situation in China. So tell us a little bit about when you first heard the news, what's your thought?
Well, I had two thoughts initially. First is it's heartbreaking. And it's especially heartbreaking because American business is actually promoting that type of abuse of human rights. And so when I see Nike advocating for using more slave labor in China, partnered with the CCP, it's an egregious violation of human rights unlike anything we've seen in decades. And for us, that's again, it's heartbreaking because that's a business that should be promoting freedom. The United States is supposed to be a beacon of freedom. How come we're allowing our businesses to actually abuse human rights of brothers and sisters around the world? That's not fair. And so it rose a great sense of injustice within me and a desire to see that change, which is why our platform exists.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we know that CCP has done a lot more evil things to Chinese people, not just a forced labor camp. There's a lot more, forced abortion, like genocide in Uyghur. So and recently the COVID lockdown. And do you know a little bit more? Tell us a little bit more. What do you think? Why the victims? Why the Chinese people are the biggest victim of this totalitarian regime? Tell a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, I think the challenge with the CCP is that it's largely subject to one man, and there's no separation of powers. And so when you have Xi Jinping allowing for basically a uniparty to take over the country, there's no checks and balances, there's no accountability. And so what makes it especially dangerous is you have the largest country in the world with the largest population by far dictated completely by one man. That is completely antithetical to individual human flourishing and the liberty that can allow for a state to prosper. Ultimately, if you have a one-party state like this, there's an expiration date on it. It can't last forever. And so we're seeing a lot in China that's evidence of that reality right now.
Brilliant. So that's great. So when you talk about the totalitarian regime, about subject to one person, one man, and above everybody, literally the emperor. So that's why we see the extremely draconian lockdown measures put on by him. And have you heard about the recent protests back in China? The Chinese people are fed up with that. Have you heard about that?
I absolutely have.
What do you think of them, uprising against the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, we certainly support the protesters. We support the uprising of people saying enough is enough. The zero COVID policy, it's not working. People deserve the rights to operate freely. And so when you have people getting fined $600 for simply having a mask below their nose, that's not conducive to human freedom or liberty. And eventually, the people are going to rise up. So we support the people rising up. Not only that, we make a direct call to the companies like Apple who are turning off AirDrop for the protesters in China. That's an egregious violation of Apple's standing as a company. It's a horrible thing for a company that large to be partnered with the CCP to infringe the rights of the people. And so not only are we calling for the CCP to stand down, the regime of the day to stand down, and the protesters to continue standing up, we're also calling on the companies that have promulgated this abuse of human power or human flourishing to also stand down. The Apples of the world are showing their colors, and the people have had enough.
Actually, this recent incident you mentioned about Apple is not a standalone incident. Actually, Apple did the same egregious things in Hong Kong protests back in 2019. Okay, when the young Hong Kong people and brave young people took their demands on the street, Apple did the same thing to them. So they repeatedly and have done this to the Chinese people and suppressing the pro-democracy movement. So shame on them.